Welcome to our web exclusive. I'm Mike Montecalvo, along with Eyewitness News analyst Lieutenant General Reginald Centracchio. General, several topics to talk about, but first, let's talk about the latest government numbers. They're showing about 13% of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans are coming home and not being able to find a job. There are several job fairs that are going to take place, but what does this say for the country? You know,
clearly it's reflective of the overall unemployment figures in the country. But if you narrow out and you look at this particular category specifically, it's rather high, certainly above the national average. So I think what we're doing as far as the job fairs are concerned, I'd like to see something further than what they're doing. They need to look at possible incentives for those companies, specifically private companies, that would offer jobs to the veterans coming home.
And that was something that was done in the past, right?
It has been. And there still are some agencies, federal agencies and state agencies, that give credit for military service in reference to perhaps giving 1 or 2 points more than those that haven't had military service. But I think there has to be some additional incentive in the form of tax relief to those companies that are employing homecoming veterans, especially from Iraq, because of the tremendous takedown we've had over the last 6 months or so.
You know, at the Eyewitness News job fair that we held a couple of weeks ago, I ran into a couple of veterans who were accountants. And, I don't think you usually put 2 and 2 together, and they said that they were having a very difficult time. Do we need to retrain the job market, maybe, or just re-educate the job market?
I think, you and I had talked about this when last week we talked about the defense budget, and specifically as it relates to electric boat. We need to look at how we're training the workforce. And I think we need to address, once again, Workforce 2000 was supposed to do this. I'm not sure how far that got it down the road. But we need to look at where the demand is and train up to that demand. And so far I haven't seen that within the educational system in Rhode Island, specifically the trades area. That's why I think we're lacking.
What about the idea of recruitment? When they, matter of fact, the National Guard was at our job fair recruiting people. They're seeing soldiers coming back and not being able to find work. That's going to hurt recruitment down the road.
It is. And at the same time, I think we need to recognize that the Guard and Reserve itself are considered one of the highest employers within the state of Rhode Island, not only for its full-time employment, but its part-time, which is also into the equation. But if you have, say, as an example, an infantry soldier, there's not much demand for that particular skill set when he comes back, or she comes back from active duty. So I think we need to look at ways and means to be able to put them into the job market by retraining them in reference to saying they did this in the military. We can transition to a new skill set to be able to fulfill the demand that's out in the Rhode Island workforce demand right now.
Now, their jobs are supposed to be protected if they're deployed, correct?
They're protected, providing they're permanent full-time employees. They're protected under USERRA, which is the Reemployment Act for military. If you were not a full-time permanent position, then you're not covered under that. But for the most part, people, we've never really had, let me retract that. One of the biggest areas we've had with reemployment rights has unfortunately been within the federal agencies, and we've had to deal with those in the past. I think that's going away, more or less, because I think employers understand, and specifically federal agencies, and understand what their federal requirements are and what the federal law is.
The military really has not been a campaign hot-button issue this time around. Obviously, it is the economy, but the GOP candidates going into South Carolina, they're looking for the veterans' vote. Perry and Paul actually put on a uniform and served. I guess Newt Gingrich talks about being an Army brat, and Rick Santorum headed up the Senate Armed Services Committee. How important is that for them to actually now start highlighting their military service when, for the past several months, all we heard about was the economy?
Absolutely. Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and all the Northeast corridor used to enjoy what South Carolina and the southern states are enjoying now. That's a heavy population of active duty troops, certainly a lot of retirees in the area, and when you get down to Florida, you're talking about another segment of retired veterans. So their focus on veterans is clearly where they need to go, and specifically to take care of our veterans, and specifically to ensure we don't continually cut the defense budget, which would eliminate bases in the South and bases all over the southeast corridor of the United States. And we went through that back in the 70s here with the closing of Newport, Quonset, and certainly Fort Devens.
So this is a good move, obviously, for Romney to hook up with John McCain.
Absolutely. And I think if he's smart, he'll really capitalize on that. What he's lacking at this particular point is personal military service. But because he served as the Commander-in-Chief of the Massachusetts National Guard, he certainly has the capacity to understand the military and specifically what the Commander-in-Chief will be required to do to support the military for our national defense.
Well, the State of the Union is going to take place next week, and Congressman David Cicilline is inviting a war veteran to the State of the Union. You kind of know a little bit about that. You weren't once, right?
I did. I was invited by Kennedy Patrick a few years back, and I'll tell you, it was quite an honor to be invited. And you're treated like a VIP when you get there and given a special seat up in the balcony, and you can really oversee the President as he delivers the State of the Union. And it's just an experience that I was really happy to experience.
What's the buzz before the President comes out? Obviously, it's a very loud room. People are talking. Are they working the room at this point?
Certainly a lot of the congressmen are working to, if you notice that when the President's speaking, unfortunately, much of the applause comes from the particular party he's from. And it's
happened over the years like that.
You see, the Republicans on one side, but this time you have pretty much of an equal balance. So it's pretty hard to differentiate between who's applauding for him and who's not. So I think when you see him making points that are obviously appealing to the Democratic Party, you get a large response, and the vice versa as far as it relates to Republican membership. But when you get to the House, you see the opposite consideration. So the House will obviously applaud and make a lot more noise than they did in the past because there's more Republicans.
All right, let's touch on a couple of topics before we run out of time. There are going to be new courtroom rules limiting liquids coming into the courtrooms. Obviously, this is for a safety reason.
It is. It's specifically designed to ensure that you don't have individuals coming into the courtroom and taking up their anger by bringing in an acid or some other toxic scenario and splashing into the eyes of defendants or perhaps juries or even judges. So I think it's the only people who are exempt from this would be the employees of the court and judges and lawyers that have already been screened.
Another topic from around the world, Russia is looking into a U.S. radar station that possibly could interfere with the Mars station, correct?
No, as far as the Mars probe that came down recently, they're looking at as to whether in fact a radar station had any impact, which is highly unlikely. But nevertheless, looking into it, which they're entitled to do, but I think they'll come up shorthanded to really make a connection between a radar system and affecting a particular probe to be able to take it out of orbit.
And finally, we want to talk a little bit about the safety of the cruise ships. I know you're one who loves to go on cruises, and we saw what happened in Italy. They're still investigating this. They're saying that the captain of that ship did not follow rules, took off before all the passengers were safe, and there's still many missing. Do new safety measures need to be put in place, or it was just this guy allegedly didn't follow what he was supposed to be doing?
I think that's perhaps the major area that fell short. Keeping in mind Carnival, as an example, owns quite a few agencies, and specifically the ship that went down. But the application of the safety measures, as an example, in the United States, they have to do this drill within 24 hours. And when any cruise I've been on, you do that before you even leave port. In the case of the Italian liner, they didn't do it at all. So I think you need to have more of a standardization as to when you conduct these crew drills. And I think specifically as it relates to the crew, expertise needs to be looked at and how well they're trained.
It's also turned into an environmental situation, too.
Absolutely. You're talking about well over, I think that was in the vicinity of 60,000 gallons of oil that has to be pumped out of that before they right the ship again.
Okay. General Centracchio, as always, thank you for your comments.
Thanks
for watching.